What's up, truckers? Young Diesel here, and today I've got some news that's going to make your blood run cold. We're talking about the complete destruction of a family business that survived 4 decades in this industry, 40 years. Think about that for a second. That's longer than most of you have been breathing, and it's all gone, wiped out. And the worst part, this is just the beginning. TGS Logistics in Fresno, California just announced they're shutting down permanently. After 4 decades of moving freight, supporting families, and keeping America's supply chain running, they're throwing in the towel. But here's what's really going to get you fired up. This isn't just about one company. This is about a systematic destruction of everything we've built in this industry. Now, before we dive into this nightmare, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because the news I'm about to share with you is stuff the mainstream media won't tell you. They don't understand our world. They don't understand what it takes to keep a truck moving down the highway. But we do. And what's happening to TGS Logistics today could be happening to your company tomorrow. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you've spent 40 years building something, 40 years of 3 a.m. dispatch calls, 40 years of dealing with brokers who think they can lowball you, 40 years of DOT inspections, breakdowns on the side of the highway, and somehow making it work. You've survived recessions, fuel spikes, equipment failures, and every bureaucrat who thought they knew your business better than you did. TGS Logistics did all of that. They survived the 80s recession, the dot-com crash, 9/11, the 2008 financial meltdown, and even the pandemic. They weathered every storm the economy could throw at them, but there's one storm they couldn't survive, and it's manufactured right here in our own backyard by politicians who have never turned a wrench or backed a 53-footer into a tight dock. The president of TGS pointed to challenging market conditions, but let me tell you what that really means. It means California has declared war on small trucking companies. It means they've created a regulatory environment so hostile, so expensive, so impossible to navigate that companies with 4 decades of experience are just walking away. AB5. 2 letters and a number that should strike fear into the heart of every owner-operator and small fleet owner in America. This law didn't just change the game, it flipped the table over and set it on fire. California decided they knew better than truckers how trucking should work. They decided that the independent contractor model that built this industry was somehow wrong. So, think about what AB5 really did. It took drivers who chose to be independent, folks who wanted to control their own destiny, who were willing to take the risk for the reward, and it basically said, sorry, you can't do that anymore. It forced small companies like TGS to either make these drivers employees or, lose them entirely. Now, making a driver an employee doesn't sound that bad until you actually break down what it really costs. We're not just talking about a paycheck here. We're talking about workers' compensation insurance that, honestly, can cost more per month than some of you make. We're talking about healthcare benefits, unemployment insurance, payroll taxes, and administrative costs that can double or even triple your labor expenses overnight. But, it gets worse. Remember, these weren't just any drivers. These were owner-operators. These were guys who owned their own rigs, maintained their own equipment, and leased to TGS. Under AB5, if you want to keep working with them, you now have to treat them like employees, even though they own their own trucks. The whole system just makes no sense. But hey, that's California for you. And just when you think it can't get any worse, California drops another bomb. Zero-emission regulations. Now they want every truck in the state to be electric. Do you have any idea what an electric truck costs? We're talking about $400,000 to $500,000 for a truck that might give you 200 miles of range on a good day. Compare that to a diesel rig that can run 1,000 miles on a tank and cost half as much. But here's the real kicker. Where are you supposed to charge these things? The infrastructure doesn't exist. You've got maybe a handful of charging stations scattered around the state, and each one takes hours to charge your truck. Hours. Imagine trying to run a just-in-time delivery schedule when you're sitting at a charging station for 3 hours every 200 miles. Small companies like TGS don't have the capital to replace their entire fleet with experimental electric trucks. They don't have the luxury of waiting around for the infrastructure to catch up. They've got bills to pay, customers to serve, and families to feed, but California doesn't care about any of that. Meanwhile, fuel costs are just crushing everybody out here. Diesel prices have been on a roller coaster lately, and honestly, it's not the fun kind at all. Insurance costs, they're going through the roof, even if you've never had an accident in your life. The insurance companies are looking at California's regulatory environment and deciding that trucking is just too risky, so they're either pulling out of the market entirely or, jacking up rates to levels that make it pretty much impossible to turn a profit. And let's talk about the freight market, because that's another disaster entirely. We're in a full-blown freight recession right now. Rates are down, volumes are down, and everybody's out here fighting over scraps. Used to be, you could count on steady freight, especially in drayage work moving containers out of the ports. Now you've got ships backed up one day and empty terminals the next, because nobody can predict what's going to happen with tariffs and trade policies. For a company like TGS that specializes in drayage work, this is a perfect storm. They're dealing with the highest regulatory costs in the country, the most expensive fuel in the country, the most expensive insurance in the country, and a freight market that's just completely unpredictable. Something's got to give, and what gave was a 40-year-old family business. But the destruction doesn't stop with the companies. It's hitting drivers where it hurts too. How many of you have noticed that the good truck stops are disappearing? I'm talking about the real truck stops, the ones that understood truckers, places where you could get a decent meal, find a parking spot without fighting for it, take a shower that didn't cost you $20, and maybe sit down and talk to another driver who understood what you were going through. Now, what do we get? Fast food joints with 10 parking spots and a fuel island. Places that treat truckers like a necessary evil instead of the backbone of the American economy. You pull in looking for a place to rest, and you're competing with cars for parking. You want a decent meal, and your choices are a soggy hamburger or a gas station hot dog that's been sitting under a heat lamp since the Clinton administration. The mom and pop truck stops that understood our business are getting squeezed out by the same forces that killed TGS Logistics. Rising costs, regulatory pressure, and corporate chains that care more about profit margins than serving drivers. We're losing the places that made this job bearable, and we're left with sterile corporate stops that treat us like walking wallets. This is bigger than just one company in Fresno. This is about the systematic destruction of the American trucking industry as we know it. The independent spirit that built this business is being regulated out of existence. The small companies that gave drivers opportunities to build something for themselves are being crushed by costs they can't control and regulations they can't afford to comply with. And here's what really gets me fired up. The politicians pushing these regulations have never spent a day in a truck. They've never tried to back a trailer into a tight dock in downtown LA traffic. They've never sat in a truck stop at 2 a.m. trying to figure out how to make the numbers work on a load that barely covers fuel. They've never had to choose between fixing their truck and putting food on the table for their kids. But they think they know better. They think they can regulate this industry into some utopian vision where every truck is electric, every driver is an employee, and somehow the freight still moves efficiently and affordably. It's pure fantasy, and companies like TGS Logistics are paying the price for their delusions. The worst part is that this is spreading. Other states are looking at California's regulations and honestly thinking they look pretty good. AB5 style laws are being proposed all over the country. Zero-emission mandates are being discussed in other states. The regulatory cancer that killed TGS Logistics is metastasizing, and well, it's coming for the rest of us. So what can we do about it? First, we need to wake up and realize that this isn't just California's problem. This is coming for all of us. Second, we need to support the organizations that are fighting these regulations in court and in the legislature. Third, we need to vote for people who actually understand that trucking is the backbone of the American economy, not some polluting industry that needs to be regulated out of existence. And we need to support each other. When you see a good independent truck, stop there. Spend your money there. Let them know you appreciate what they do. When you hear about a small company struggling with these regulations, speak up for them. And when you meet a driver who's thinking about getting out of the business because of all this regulatory nonsense, just remind them why we do this job in the first place. We're not just truck drivers. We're the people who keep America moving. We're the ones who make sure the shelves stay stocked and the economy keeps running. We're the last of the real independents in a world that's trying to turn everyone into corporate employees. TGS Logistics fought the good fight for 40 years, but even they couldn't survive this regulatory assault. Their closure is a warning shot. It's a preview of what's coming for the rest of us if we don't start pushing back against these job-killing, business-destroying regulations. The question is, are we going to fight back, or are we just going to let them regulate our industry into extinction? Are we going to stand up for that independent spirit that built American trucking, or are we just going to roll over and let the politicians and bureaucrats destroy everything our generation and the generations before us built? The choice is ours, but man, we better make it fast, because if the closure of TGS Logistics teaches us anything, it's that even 40 years of success can be wiped out by just a few years of bad policy. And once these companies are gone, they're not coming back. That's all for today, truckers. Make sure you subscribe if you want to keep getting the truth about what's really happening in our industry. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. And hey, let me know in the comments what you think about the TGS Logistics closure and whether you think this regulatory war on trucking is going to spread to your state. Keep the shiny side up and the regulatory side down. I'll see you in the next one.